This is my second video on the Concordance Bible software. In this series, I want to show you how I use Concordance to search the Hebrew Bible. The one thing you need to do to follow this particular video and to search is to have a tagged text, a Hebrew tag text, Hebrew Bible tag text. If you don't know what that is, take a look at the first video. Basically, if you buy the, I think it's called the Hebrew Starter set or collection, you'll get it. If you just bought the basic starter, then you'll have just a demo. So you'll have the first three chapters. If you have the trial version, you'll have the demo, so you can search in the first three chapters of Genesis. Okay, assuming you have that. If you don't have it, go back and take a look at the first video. Then we can do our searches. Now, this is not quite how I normally do my searches. Normally I have it like this. I can move this around. This is normally the way I set it up, but you probably don't have it set up this way, and so I'm going to delete everything, and we're going to build this up from scratch so that you can see how I set it up. So I can get rid of everything. There. That's about as minimalist, I would think, as you can get in Accordance. In Accordance. So let's build it up. So we'll show the toolbar. The toolbar are frequently used items that you can access, of course, from the menu. And so now let's open a search window. We want to search that Hebrew text, that Hebrew tag text. We could do it from here. Search Hebrew text, Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, or I can do it from the file. File, New tab, Hebrew text, BHS. Okay, so there we go. We have our Hebrew text over here. We have a blank pane over here where they're suggesting some things we could add to be in parallel with this. I want to add, I usually have the ESV text, an English text, right next to it. And to do that, click on this little button called Add Parallel. You'll see your most recent things here, but if you go down to Text, you can go find the text you want. So I'm going to add ESV with Strong's. I realize this is going to be tiny on your computer, but you can sort of see where things are here. Text, ESV with Strong's. Okay, so I don't need this extra pane. I'm going to get rid of that. Now, the next thing we should do before we do anything else is up these font sizes so you can see it. And you can set this to whatever you want on your computer. This is the font increase, font decrease. I'm going to make it really big for the sake of this video. I'm going to make this one bigger too, but not too much bigger. You'll see these on all different panes where you have text. The other thing I like to do, you'll notice here that this is like a paragraph format. So it just goes on from one verse to the next. We get down, oh, it's a long paragraph. Maybe it's not even a paragraph. You can change this. And for searching, this is good for reading, but for searching, I like to have my verses separate because typically they're discontiguous verses anyway. You got a verse from this chapter and a verse from that chapter over there, and it doesn't make sense for them to be flowing. So you can right-click on a pane to change the display. Set text pane display. You could also, if you clicked here, you can go up to display, set text pane display. But better than that is to type Ctrl-T or Command-T on the Mac. And the reason that's better is because we're going to be doing this a lot with some other panes. And so any of these panes here, most of them anyway, you can change the text display. So I'm going to press Command or Ctrl-T, Command-T on the Mac. And you can see it's set to paragraphs with space as a default. You can do paragraphs, paragraphs with space, separate verses, or separate. It says separate with space, but it means separate verses with space. That's the one I like. And you see here, it actually gives the font size. That's the font that was manipulated here. We could change that here, to 16 or something. Goes real tiny. And so we can Ctrl-T and put that right up to, what did we have it, 54? And there we go. This one, I'm going to also do the same thing, Ctrl-T. I'm going to do verses, separate verses with space. I'm going to leave the font fairly small. Okay, so Now we have two parallel texts. As we drag one, or as we scroll in the one, it will keep it in sync on the right. So Genesis 1:5, 1:5, Genesis 1 verse 6, 1:6 shows up there. And you can move around quicker, or you can move around more precisely with this. Next verse at the bottom, or next chapter, chapter 2, chapter 3, or next book, Exodus, Leviticus, whatever. Let's okay. Let's actually go back to Genesis. So I'll type in Genesis here. You'll notice that it is defaulting to, I'll go Genesis 1, defaulting to verses. Again, this is very tiny. You're going to have to view this on a computer. If you view this on a phone, you're just going to have to believe me. If you click this here, you'll see it says verses, words, or letters. So default is verses. I'm going to search for Genesis 1:1. Now we're back there. If I do just Genesis 1, yeah, it should give the same thing. Okay. Now, when I highlight the words, as I said, you'll see the English highlighted on the right. Not every element. So this b isn't being highlighted, the et isn't being highlighted, the article isn't being highlighted. But most of the words are. Very, very handy. When you read a new text, you can quickly figure out what word corresponds with what English. But there's a lot more power here if we use the Instant Details pane. And so I always have this up. When I roll over this, I get Instant Details on the bottom. And so, for example, bara, I see in the bottom all the details regarding that word. So first it tells me, let's see here, if I, reshit, is this the lexical form? Let me just go down here. Let's find another word. That's not, okay. Yeah. Okay, so the very first entry is the inflection. It's showing you exactly what you've got here. So yomer, without the vav, just the word. And then the next one, it's going to show, it's going to look like a duplication of the roots. You got amar, and then you got another amar. Unfortunately, I can't point down there because if I move my cursor, it's going to disappear. But actually, if I do this, okay, there we go. Oh, it disappears. Okay. You just have to follow. So on the bottom here, I've got amar. The first one is a homograph. So you may have more than one usage for the root amar. And this is indicating this is the first usage, what they've determined to be number one. In the parentheses, that's the root, the three letters. Then it tells you the verb, or tells you that it is a verb. If I go over this, it tells me it's a noun. Okay. Let's see, this will be a verb. Now let's try and get something. Is there anything else here? Al, a particle. Okay. Then it says particle preposition. If you go back down here to vayomer, and then it tells me stuff about that verb. Kal, vayaktol, 3ms. Third masculine singular vayaktol, vav consecutive. And it gives a gloss to say. On the bottom, beneath it, it says ESVS. It gives an H number. I believe that's the Strong's numbers. I don't use those, but I think that's what that is. So I make sure this is up. And again, I can increase the font size here. We want it bigger. We'll make it really big for the sake of the video. Is it the maximum? Let me try to shrink it here. Yeah. Let me actually do this. Ctrl-T. 54. Maybe it matches. I'm learning stuff as I do this here. Oh, that was the wrong one. Okay, so I don't know if I can use Ctrl-T on that panel at the bottom. Doesn't look like it, but I can certainly use this. And it seems to max out right there, whatever size it is. Okay, so we got an Instant Details window, we have a parallel window, English, Hebrew, and then English, and we can scroll around. You can move our cursor around and get details. Up here is where you do your searching. Right now we are searching for verses, so references. Genesis 1:1, Exodus 1:1. So I could type in Exodus 1:1 or whatever, and it goes straight there. If I want, I'm going to just delete that. If I want to search for words, then I can select words right here. And so I can search for, let's search for bara. We know that's in the first verse of the Bible. Genesis 1:1. So bara. Now you notice I just typed in bara, Beit Resh Aleph. I have all these options. The default is just the 3 letters. Anything that has those 3 letters as a root. There's some other words here that use bara. I want the verb, and you can see right here that there are 2 homographs. This root, in terms of the verb, has 2 usages. One is to create, which is the one we know, it's the one that's most common. And then apparently there's one called to mean to be fat, and another to cut. So make sure you select the right homograph, the one you want. If you do this, you're going to get everything. So let's go for create. And then we'll hit enter. And it takes us to the first occurrence, which of course is Genesis 1:1. God created. And then the next one occurs in chapter 1, verse 21. Elohim created, right? Well, Elohim created here too. But this is the Vayiktol. This is in a sequence of events. This is the first occurrence. And as we highlight these, again, we can see on the bottom, this one's a Kal Vayiktol, or here, Kal Katal, etc. So that is one way to search. And there are all kinds of commands. Search, you can enter in all these commands and all kinds of stuff. Symbols and tags, and I don't do any of that. I don't use this for searching because I don't know all those symbols, and it's not very intuitive for me. Fortunately, Concordance has a graphical search pane window, and it's called the Hebrew construct, not to be confused with the grammatical Hebrew construct, infinitive construct, anything like that. It means you're constructing a search and you're doing it graphically. And that is the most cool and powerful thing in my assessment in Concordance. So to do that, to get that up, it's kind of hidden. So we go over here to File, and we want a new tab, and we're going to go down to Visual. Nope, it's not Visual. Where is it? Construct. Visual is where, it is a visual's way of searching, but visual is where you have maps and atlases and stuff like that. So we want to go down to Construct and do Hebrew. You can do it in English and Greek as well. We want Hebrew. Okay, so now it gave me a new tab. It squished this one over. We still have our Hebrew and our English, and we have this huge tab where we can search, and we can search in different columns. Now it's way too big. I'm going to move it over to about here. We can always resize it if we need the extra columns. And so now let us search for bara. Actually, let's search for amar. And again, I want a particular word, amar. I want to say. There's an also to boast. I'm going to choose to say. Click OK and hit search. Now it opened up a new construct or a new search window to do this, to give me my results. And here they are, right? So they're all small. Everything's default, back to default. Let's say I want to use the window I've already set up. So to do that, then I can double click this. Okay, 2 ways. Let's delete this. If this is double clicked, if this is highlighted, when we open our construct, then it's going to link to this. So let's try this again. File, new tab, construct Hebrew. And you see the words linked Hebrew construct. You don't have to worry about what it is, but that tells you that this is now linked. So if I type in, I'll explain these things in a moment. Let's type in amar, and we'll just look for this one here. And we hit search. Now it's showing up in my window, in the window that I want, in the search window that I want. I just say this because sometimes people set these things up. I know I did these things. I set things up, and all of a sudden they weren't linked. I didn't know what was going on. It was going to some other pane or whatever. So make sure this is selected when you construct, or when you make, or when you go new tab, Hebrew construct. Now, sometimes this will get messed up. you'll accidentally be in here and you'll type something and you'll screw things up. And it's like, oh, now it doesn't work. You see, if I type in a mod, it's going to go to a new window because it doesn't recognize that. If that happens, and after the fact, and you already have things set up here, this can get complicated. Double click this, your search pane in the search window, and go to Command, where are we? Search, Command, Link. So that's the one command that I still use manually like this, okay? It's in order to link it to my Hebrew construct. So click that, and if there's more than one option, it'll give you a window. You can click the one you want. In this case, I've only got one thing available, and so it just throws it in, and now it'll work. Let's just test it with a different word. Let's do shamar, to keep or watch. I got the verb there, and there, it's working. Okay? Okay, so now we have things set up. This is how I like them. And let's move it over like this. And let us go. Okay, one other thing before we, before we do more searching, and that is analytics. We want to have, this is our search window. This is, or our search results. This is where we're constructing the search. And this here, it's really hidden. Like you wouldn't know it was there. This is the analytics display. You click this, and you have all these different sorts of analytics you can do. So you can do, for example, a hits graph. It throws it down here for now. I'm going to move this. If you want to move any panels, switch them around. You can just drag them. You click this part, and you can drag it. And as you drag it around, it will show you where it's going to go. I haven't released it yet, so I could put it there. Well, let's try it. Okay, could do that. If I want things long and narrow, I don't really want that. Actually, I do want that, but I want it over here. And I'm going to shrink this guy up. To shrink these, you need to put your cursor right over the line until it turns into that kind of an icon. And I can move it over. Okay, so there's a hits graph. I can also do, let's see here. How do I, okay, this is for changing how it looks. There's all kinds of things you can change. You want line graphs or areas or whatever. I don't use this particular thing very much. Let's go over here and get another one. Analysis graph. Hits graph, analysis graph. I don't know how those differ. They're both graphs. This is the one I use, analysis. Before we go there, you could do a bar chart. It has this many cows. This word exists in this many cows, this many nefels, this many hefels, or whatever. What else do they have here? Concordance. Okay. If you want all the verses listed, here they are. You can roll over them. It'll give you the Hebrew on the bottom. You can copy them. You sometimes, let me type amad here. If I type in amad to say, which is an extremely common word, if I do this, it's going to show nothing. Okay? And the reason is there are too many. And you see here it says 5, oh, you can't see this, but 5,000. Actually, can I erase this? Let me make this bigger. Okay. So amad occurs 5,307 times. And it's not giving me the concordance because there's too much, or there are too many. So if I change the display, again, Ctrl-T, click on here, Ctrl-T, then I can change the thresholds, display thresholds, text excerpts. It's only going to display if it's less than, if it's more than 50, less than 1,000. So I want to accommodate all this. Let's put in 5,500. That's more than what I got here. Hit OK. There we go. Scads and scads of verses, right? You can copy that. And you can change the display here to display differently, I'm sure. Ignore, maybe you can't. I was going to say you could maybe have it so that you have each one on a separate line. It doesn't look like you can do that. So concordance is just a big blob. Anyway, I don't use any of this stuff really. There's one analytics that I use, and it is analysis. And I do like it over here. I don't know why. I just do. I don't know if it's logical or not, but I like it between my results and my searches. It's kind of the way I think about it. I look from here to here to here. I don't know. Anyway, let's make it a bit bigger so we can see something here, and we can increase the font size. So let me see. Let me start this. I'll illustrate these things with bara. So let's search for bara. Beit Resh Aleph. When I didn't actually explain this before, I just did it. Let me start from the beginning here. So when you want to search for a word, you are searching for a lexeme. So the word they use for word is L-E-X, lexeme. That means it's the lexical entry, okay? It's what's in your dictionary. So grab this guy and drag it into the first column, Hebrew's right to left, so you want it in this column. And then we get a window. And we can type in here, we can scroll if we want. So we can search for father, just click it, and it'll put it in words to enter, hit OK, and then hit search. And we see all the occurrences of father, okay? Now I can double click it. I don't have to delete it and get a new one. I can just double click it, bring the window up again, and let's do this one, fresh green. Apparently that means fresh green. Let's try that. And it replaces whatever's there, okay? Do a search. Interesting. Okay, so this is not a common word. The root is aleph beit beit, evidently. This particular form is av or ave, and it only occurs twice in the Bible, and here they are, in Job and Song of Solomon. Who knew? Now, scrolling through all this to find your word is a pain. So you're going to want to learn to type Hebrew and set up your computer to type Hebrew. That would be a separate video to show you how to do that. But I believe, actually, let me just try something. Okay, my computer, I've got Hebrew on it, Hebrew keyboards, but right now it's set to English. If I type in English and I just type in letters, I see there's Hebrew letters here. So what you need to know then is what keyboard you're using. Let me show you one other thing. If you go into Preferences, Edit Preferences, or Control comma or Command comma, wait for a second to come up. There's all kinds of stuff in here. If we go down to Greek and Hebrew, then there is a line here that says use Israeli keyboard layout for Hebrew. I have Israeli keyboards set up because that's the keyboard I use, is the way they set up the keys on the Israeli keyboards in Israel. If I turn that off, and then it's going to be the default, whatever that is exactly, it's going to somewhat match the English. So if I type, let's see, if I type a G, I get a Gimel, okay? If I type a D, I get a Dalet. If I type an A, it gives Aleph. Interesting. Okay, Y is Yud. I is doing something weird because that's, I don't know what that is. So I don't know this keyboard. You can mess around with this. I'm sure it's in the help to, it'll be a picture so you can know how to type. So you don't need to actually set up a Hebrew keyboard. You can just find their Hebrew keyboard, just type in, just Google Concordance Hebrew keyboard, and they'll show you what a picture looks like so you can see it. I'm going to change it back because I don't use that keyboard. Control comma should bring up my preferences. I use Israeli keyboard, so I'm going to put that on and hit OK. So when you bring up this window, you want to type. It's much easier to type. So let's look for Amar. Actually, no, let's look for Bara. That's what we're looking for, right? Beit Resh Aleph. So type it in, and it scrolls right away to where I want to go. And I can see here there are three what they call homographs. Bara can mean to create, to be fat, or to cut. I want the standard one. As soon as I click it here, it will show up down here. I can click all kinds of stuff. I can search for all this stuff at once if I want, but I don't want to do that. Let me just get rid of all this. I just want this guy. Hit enter. And then hit search. And there we go. Bara. Like we expect, Genesis 1:1. God created. Now, here, actually, before we do that, before we look at more information here, let's see how even this little bit, I'm just going to make this a bit smaller, how this could be helpful. I'm going to shrink this just, maybe we'll go like this. English is not so important. Or we can read the English easier. Let's look at bara. Some have said in the past that bara means to create out of nothing, to create ex nihilo. Okay? Presumably they say that because God created the heavens and the earth. They want to argue that God created the heavens and the earth out of nothing, which I think is a true doctrine. But this tying it to the verb and saying that bara means that is a bit problematic. So let's check that. Does bara really mean ex nihilo creation or just creation, creating something? So we look at the first example. God created the heavens and the earth. We don't know. We get down here. God created the great sea creatures. Okay? Vayevra Elohim et ha-taniim. Did God make the sea creatures out of nothing? Good question. We don't know, right? What about this one here? 127. Let me use the verse here. If I use the verse, see it right now my English is down here. If I use the verse selection here, advancement, then it lines everything up. Vayevra Elohim et ha-adam. God created man. B'tzalmo, in his image. B'tzelem Elohim bara oto, in the image of God, of Elohim. He created him. Zacharu nekeva, male and female. Bara otam, male and female, he made them. So we have bara 3 times here. Okay? Did God make Adam out of nothing? Ex nihilo. No, he didn't. He made him out of the dust of the earth. And he made Eve out of the rib of Adam. So we have here, by the 3rd verse, it's pretty clear that bara, well, it's very clear, bara does not mean ex nihilo, right? Because he made Adam out of the dust of the earth, and it uses the word bara. So if you just look at English, you may not know, but the Hebrew, you can run through and you can see where bara is used and make some deductions out of that. Okay, cool. So that's just using the search results. Now, let us just shrink this up a bit so I can move this up a bit. Actually, I don't need so much over here. We have here bara. We could look at more details here. So if I press Ctrl-T, which again is the set display, now it's setting the analysis display. If I click over here, Ctrl-T, it's setting the text display with whatever options are appropriate for text. I want to set it here for the analysis display. So again, Ctrl-T does it everywhere, Command-T on the Mac. And I can see here all I have in column 1, all it's going to display from column 1 is Lex. Let's add stem. Stem is binyan, okay? And let's hit OK. And we see it updates, and it tells me that I've got lots of cows, or 38 cows, and 10 nifals. If I click it again, or if I set the display again, let's add aspect. Okay, aspect is like conjugation under stem. So here now we see for bara, it exists in the cal katal, yiktol, vayiktol, imperative, infinitive construct, and participle. And the nifal, it exists in these forms. Okay, so you get more detail. If we add inflection under here, we're going to see all the different ways that the cal katal is used. And it gets really, you give tons of detail here. So inflection means the actual word with its vowels. This is the aspect. This is the binyan or the stem. Let's get rid of inflection. We've got too much detail here. Tag, we could do tag, and that will give, it'll tell us that there is katal first common singular. There are 6 of them. There are 12 of these, or 2 of these, 11 of those, etc. Again, that's too much detail for right now. If they were nouns, you could move in, take a look at the number, the person. Actually, no, these are verbs too. So number, PGN, PG, let's put gender. You can change the order here. Person, let's do person, gender, number, PGN, person, gender, number. And so you get all this detail, way too much detail. So what we want to do is we want to limit our search here in order to limit what we have going on here. So for example, let me just get rid of all this stuff. Or actually, let's leave it. Let's go here. So lex here is the word, right? We search for bara, we search for shamar. Let me actually change the word here. Let's change it to amar. Okay? Amar. Here's amar, which is got lots and lots of hits. It exists 5,307 times. And we don't want all this information here. What we want to do is we want to limit it here. So this is a verb, and so I can now take a category button. This is the word, this is the category, it's a verb. I'm going to drop verb here, and I have a lot of the same options here that I have here. This is for determining what to search for, and this is what to display. So I'm going to limit it on the search side. I'm going to search for a smaller group, and we'll see what it shows up over here. So let's look for just the cal. Amar. Let's look for cal, katal, 3ms. Okay, cal, katal, or perfect, 3ms. Search. Okay. Now we don't see anything other than all these category designations. So let's go in here and let's put the inflection back. Okay. Cal-Katal 3ms, we see two forms for the Cal-Katal 3ms of Amar, or the Cal-Perfect 3ms. And I don't actually need all this stuff because I already know that I'm limited here. So let's simplify all of this, and we're just going to do, let's leave the stem just to remind us. We'll get rid of everything else except the inflection. Okay, so Cal Perfect 3ms has these two forms, and over here we're going to see it. Let me shrink this up just a touch. So we see a model like this, we see it like this, we see it like this, and we see that 700 plus are what we would expect. This is what you get in your grammar tables. 3 of them look like this. Interesting. Why do we have 3 like this? You could scroll down and try to find those 3, but you got to go through about 700 items to go find them. Actually, you don't. I just saw one. But the other way, you have to be a little bit careful with this, but the other way is to triple click. It says triple click a form to see its occurrences. So I triple click this. It opened up a new search window. I'm just going to get rid of this. And we can see Amar, make it a little bigger. These are the 3 occurrences where Amar has 2 comments. The second one's a comment rather than a patak. And can you see why? It's because it's in pause, right? This is in pause and this is in pause. And so it's lengthened. Otherwise, they're all like this. So you can learn something about the Hebrew grammar, Hebrew morphology, simply by searching. And when people send me questions every once in a while, why does this word look like this? Or what should this word look like? I don't go to grammar tables, usually. I just search. I search for that word, and I just see what's actually in the Bible. Okay, now, we've done bara. Let's take a look at Adam. I want to show you something with Adam. So this is a noun now, Adam. And again, we have different words that use those 3 letters. We have to be read, that's a verb. I don't want that. I don't want Adom. I don't want Odem, Ruby. I don't want Edom, Edom. I want, one of them has to do with man, okay? So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Adams. Let's take a look at the first one. Number 1, see what it shows. I'm going to get rid of verb because this is not a verb. If you want to get rid of one of these things, you click it and you hit delete. And if it doesn't delete on you, drag it. There's some bug sometimes. So just drag it a little bit and then hit delete. And then we'll search. Okay. So we have, and I'm less interested in this right now. I'm more interested in this over here. So we have, let us make man in our image, Genesis 1:26. And God created the man. I'm looking at the English there, okay? So God created man in his image. and there was no man to work the ground. 22 verse 7, God formed the man, etc. Let's take a look at, we'll type it again, Adam. So we see Adam, the name versus the man. We'll do the first one that says Adam here. We'll click that. And so the first occurrence is in Genesis 2 verse 20, according to how they have tagged it. And it says here, the man, interesting, the man gave names to all the livestock. Concordance is saying, translate this as the proper name. Right? No, pardon me. This, see, I should pay attention. For some reason, when I highlight this, it doesn't highlight it over there. It fooled me. It should highlight the English, but it's highlighting the wrong thing. It may be because of this. I'm not sure. So be a little careful with that. Accordance isn't perfect, but it's super, super helpful. So this one here, the man gave names to all the livestock. Vayikra ha'adam shemot l'chol ha'behema. Okay, behema. The man he called the names of all the animals. This is the first usage. You look at the bottom, Adam with number 1 by it. So that's the first homograph, meaning man. Meaning, in this case, it's actually a single man. It's not humanity, right? It's a single guy. His name happened to be Adam, but here it's the man. Down here, though, this one, ul Adam, but for Adam, the proper name, the proper noun, the name, was not found a helper corresponding to him. So Accordance has labeled this one as number 3. You can see it at the bottom, or you can see it over in the search. You can see it over here. This one, they have labeled it as number 1. You see it at the bottom. So that's probably not Accordance decision. It's probably they're following some lexicons. You may argue with that, and there are differences of opinion. You read the commentaries. Which ones of these Adams should be the proper name or the proper noun, like the name of the guy, as opposed to a generic man or humanity? It's not always clear. But they've done some work, and that's what they have decided. So when you search, be careful what you're searching for. If you want to catch them all, then add them all. Because this search here, number 3, it didn't pick this up. Only picked up this one. And if I search for just number 1, let me do that. Adam, number 1. This is Genesis 2:20. We'll see what it does. I'll go down there. So we'll scroll down to use our verses here. 2:20, 2:8, 2:15, 2:16, 2:20. Now it picked up this one, not this one. Okay? If you want them all, if you want to be safe, then click the ones you want. Adam. And you may have to dig around a bit to see what you want. So I want this one, and I want that one. And if I do that, and I go down to verse 222 or 220, I should get them both. You also learn stuff. You can learn a lot of stuff by doing this. You learn your words. Good vocab exercise. If I type in Adam, I see another Adam. Who's that? Some other guy? Click it. We'll test it out, and we'll see where does it show up. Okay, it's only twice, and it's in Joshua. And if I roll over here, I see far away, the waters coming down from above stood and rose up in a heap far away at Adam. This is a place name. It's a village. It's a place. So that's what they're labeling number 5. Now the other verse where it shows up is interesting because they're labeling as a place. At Adam, they transgressed the covenant. But look at the ESV. The ESV is translated as a name here, like Adam. But like Adam, they transgressed the covenant. So were they transgressing the covenant like the person Adam, or were they transgressing the covenant at the place called Adam? Well, that's a question. And evidently, people are doing different things. So you can kind of, when you dig around in these things, you start to see what some of the exegetical questions are because you see different results. A translation that doesn't match what the gloss is. Okay, that may be a bit complicated. I just wanted to show you that there are different homographs, and make sure you click the ones you want, or you may not get the results you expect. So we've looked at bara as an example. We looked at Adam. Let us look at rachatz, rachaf. Another example of something that, just an example of how you can learn something about the scriptures from searching. So this occurs only 3 times. And the reason I searched for it is because I knew it was here in Genesis 1:1. Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim, and God hovered, actually spirit, v'ruach Elohim, the ruach of God, merachefet, he hovered or was hovering, it's a participle, al panei hamayim, was hovering over the surface of the waters. Merachefet, what does that mean? Okay, hovering. Well, there's only 2 other usages. If we go to Deuteronomy, we see, I'll read the English here, like an eagle that stirs up its nest, that flutters over its young. Actually, this does work. If I highlight the English, it highlights the Hebrew too. Very cool. So, yerachef, to flutter like a bird. And the third one, down here, this is interesting. Concerning the prophets, this is Jeremiah, my heart is broken within me, all my bones shake. I am like a drunken man, like a man overcome by wine, because of the Lord and because of his holy words. So this is regarding the prophets, okay? Nishbar libi, my heart was broken, bekirbi, within me, rahafu al akol atzmotai, all my bones rahafu. They were what? Fluttering. They were shaking. Okay. So it helps us understand this a little bit. We have only 3 occurrences of this word. What was the Holy Spirit doing, the Spirit of God doing over the face of the deep? Something like a bird, movement. There was movement going on, whatever exactly that means. So when you search words, you can compare the verses and you can start to learn. You can start to do exegesis. It's not so difficult here because we have 3 occurrences, right? But we also want to check because we don't know everything. And the place I go to do a quick check and do quite a thorough check actually is NIDOTTE. So I want to show you that. So let's open up NIDOTTE, new tab, and dictionary, NIDOTTE. Oh, no, Hebrew lexicon. Dictionaries are English-based things. Hebrew lexicon, NIDOTTE. I generally have this up all the time, so I don't have to go look for it. Okay, it dropped it down here. I'm going to put it just for the moment here. I'm going to make some room for it. And I'm going to up the font size so you can see it. So this is just a short little... now it went here because I was already there, I think. Let me type it in, rachaf. Or the other way is you can right-click on a word. Let me just close this here. If I right-click on the word I'm interested in, I can say look up in a dictionary. And it gives me a default dictionary. Just put it in place again. In my case, the one I have set up, and you can change this, is Klein's Dictionary of Classical Hebrew. And so we could read through that, but I actually want NIDOTTE. If I click here, I can move between the different options, the different dictionaries. So I'm going to do this one, NIDOTTE. And there we have it. So I'm going to read this. In the ancient Near East, the etymology is debated. An Egyptian origin for the expression of Genesis 1 has been proposed. In Ugaritic, you have something about a winged goddess. And in Syriac, it means to brood or protect. Within the Bible, rachaf appears only 3 times. We know what they are. We already just looked at them. In the Old Testament, Piel, it's in Genesis 1 and Deuteronomy, and in Jeremiah and the cow. So Piel and cow, a little different. In Genesis 1:2, it describes the activity location of the Holy Spirit in relation to the primeval waters at the outset of the creative ordering of the world. In the Song of Moses, in Deuteronomy 32, it employs the same verb to predict the hovering movement of an eagle. This eagle metaphor describes the theophanic presence of Yahweh. So in Deuteronomy 32, it's a picture of Yahweh over the people of Israel. the pillar of cloud by day and the fire by night, as he led Israel through the barren wilderness. In both instances, Rahaf characterizes the activity of the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit of God, okay, at creation and over the nation of Israel. The first with regard to the creation of the cosmos, and the second with regard to the creation of a people. That is perceptive. I wouldn't have sort of put those together. In Jeremiah, Rahaf is used to describe the trembling of a drunken man. This metaphor is applied to the prophet himself as one who has experienced the judicial presence of the Lord. So Jeremiah was feeling his bones shake. He received his holy word and subsequently trembles as a human participant in this holy divine phenomena. And this article was written by Van Pelt, one of the authors of Basic Biblical Hebrew, and Walter Kaiser. So, a nice little article. They're basically doing what we are doing when we search for a word, except they have more background and they have more sense of Hebrew, the better knowledge of Hebrew, so they're not going to make the type of mistakes we're going to make. But we have a pretty good sense just from searching this word with these three occurrences. And I gain a little bit more here, a comparison between the Spirit of God hovering at creation and the Spirit of God hovering over the people of Israel, the Israelites creating a new world and creating a new people. Interesting. So I definitely like to do my searching, but you don't want to get cocky. It's easy to search and find something you think is new and catchy, and I just read the word catch there, and think highly of ourselves. Let's use the resources that are out there, the people the scholars, they can set us straight and keep us from getting too wild in our interpretations. But reading this now, after I've read the verses, totally helps. And of course, with bigger words, amar, there are so many examples, you're not going to go and read 700 verses probably to try to figure out what that means. So for me, searching and dictionaries or lexicons, especially NIDOTTE, are really useful tools to use together for Bible study. There's a lot more that you can do with searching, but I think we're at 47 minutes, which is way too long, longer than I expected this video to be. So we will stop this one here, and maybe I'll make another video with other examples of how I use Concordance to search the Hebrew Bible.